Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
What is up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. It feels like my Friday. I am headed out of town this weekend for one of my best friend's bachelorette parties. So for me, it's Friday, which means all good vibes here. Matt Smith is going to join us in a little bit. We have to talk about the Avalanche starting off the season 3-0. I'm going to have a trivia question for you guys. And then Nichushkin, we're so happy for him that he's able to get a goal last night. Kind of good vibes. Cale Makar, we're going to get into the history that is Cale Makar, how lucky we are that we get to see him. But first, let's address some Calvin Booth and the Nuggets GM drama. Let's just get into this just a little bit. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but there was this quote going around that says, I know you couldn't have two guys that couldn't guard, and we couldn't have two guys that were young and kind of more me guys. Booth told The Ringer. Mike makes $30 million. He's one of the best shooters in the NBA. So Bones, there's no place for you. And good morning to everybody in the comments. Love you guys hanging out with us. So Calvin Booth responds and he says this: under no circumstances would I make or approve of those kind of comments for public consumption. It's not my character as a person or executive, and I think it's an unfair characterization of Michael and Bones. I think Bones is a great kid, has a bright future ahead of him, a charismatic player in our game, and obviously Michael is a core piece of our program with his character and offensive and defensive prowess. So I think that was unfair for those things to be put out there, and hopefully it doesn't happen in the future. So what I took from this, and I'm curious if you guys all took this, is that he said those things in private. So that's what he actually thinks about the me guys comments, but he just didn't want them to get out. There's lots of things when you're working in the media that you're looking and you're going, okay, like everyone goes, this is off the record. So things are getting told back and forth to people, but like you're not allowed to publicly say them. So clearly that wasn't like talked about apparently, and the Ringer ended up putting it out there. But that's just what Calvin Booth thinks. There's two me guys on that team. You couldn't do it. So Bones had to get shipped out. Michael was going to stay with the Nuggets. I think it's kind of fascinating. And it's just the way that he said it. I'm going to go back to it real quick. The under no circumstances would I make or approve of those kind of comments for public consumption. I find that fascinating. I don't know if it's necessarily a good look for Calvin Booth. I know obviously he's probably trying to save face a little bit when it comes to Bones and Michael, but it's not really a great look to just say I wouldn't say these for public consumption. But anyways, it got out there, so I'm definitely kind of on the not a good thing. Reading the comments real quick. Happy Wednesday, Rachel. Good morning to you, Paul. Rachel, what a win last night. Yes, so good. Avalanche win. Go Avs. You guys, I'm loving that everybody is still on the Avalanche hype train. Like, it makes me so freaking happy. They are so deserving of it. We talked a lot about locking up that core, and so I'm really excited for the next couple of seasons, too. I was a little worried that things like the doors were shutting on this Avalanche team, but it seems like they've added enough of the right pieces. Now everybody just kind of has to stay healthy, and who knows where this team can go. So I'm definitely intrigued. Going back to some more of the comments. Rantanen with another goal. Yes. We need a Calvin Booth GM for the Broncos. He'll just be honest, right? Just go out there and say what you actually feel. George Payton, take a few notes there. Winning sweeps all the drama away. Let's move on to the Avs. I love that. I love that so much. So let's talk about the Avs a little bit, because I see our very own friend Matt Smith hanging out with us behind the scenes. So we're going to bring him in because, yes, you guys, last night's game was so good. It was one I had circled. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Good morning, Rachel. How you doing?
Win. The Avalanche are 3-0. We're so stoked about this.
Yes. And a really hard-fought game last night, too. A game it did not look like they were going to win, Rachel, nor did it, quite frankly, look like they deserved to win up until that third period where they really started to put things together. Slow start, though. Didn't it kind of feel eerily similar to what we saw in the playoffs last year against Seattle?
Seattle gets on the board. Yep, there you go.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, look, I mean, the Avs are off to a 3-0 start, and I think 30,000-foot view. 3-0 on a three-game road trip to start the season. You'll take that every day of the week. So, I think it's been a pretty solid first week of the season for the Avalanche.
For sure. You can't be happier coming off a road trip, going home Thursday night against the Blackhawks. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But I definitely am I'm feeling more comfortable with this lineup, right? It was kind of like, okay, how are these new pieces going to come in and are they going to vibe with everybody? And it honestly just feels like each line already has some chemistry built there. And for the fact that we're only 3 games into the season, that's great to see because it's only going to build here from here on out.
Right. And I mean, it's primarily the same team, except for a brand new third line, right?
Yep.
That's pretty much what the Avalanche spent their capital on. They went and got a second line center in Ryan Johansson. And then
wait. I want to know why you have the
because I'm not sold yet.
Okay.
I'm not sold yet. In fact, I don't know if you recall, but when the Avs made that signing, I took a lot of heat because I was like, that's not the guy. It's nice, but it's, I mean, they were going to have to hit green lights. So anyway.
What in your head, though, is going to say, okay, yes, he is the right guy. He is going to fit in. He's going to be what so many were hoping with Nazem Kadri staying. Like, what does he have to do to prove that to you?
He's got to produce, and he's got to drive offense on that second line. One of the greatest parts about Naz's game is that he was great at making plays for others, right? There was a lot of times where he'd bring the puck into the zone and he'd facilitate for his line mates, and he'd be the quote unquote Nathan MacKinnon of the second line, where he's setting up plays, right, for his teammates and also being able to produce himself. Johansson's just not as fleet as foot necessarily as a guy that I would have liked, my ideal pick for that spot. But the Avs had to do it under cap control, right? Under cost control. So look, I don't want to get bogged down into that, but they added him, and it's going to take Rachel, quite frankly, at least 30, 40 games for me to be able to accurately judge where he's at. Obviously, it takes some time for players to fit into this new system. It's not easy to play with the Avs. They play so fast, and they're all, like you said, they have great chemistry, right? So they know how to play together really well. So sometimes it takes a little while for new guys, I think back to Josh Manson, to really fit into that grouping. But Ryan Johansson has been great in the faceoff circle, where the Avs got dominated for the better part of last night. So certainly having guys that are proficient in the faceoff circle help. But the other pieces they add, Miles Wood on the third line, Ross Colton on the third line, and Tomas Tatar on that third line as well. I thought those guys had a good night, not necessarily production-wise, right? But they did some good things, kind of the intangibles. They're a very tough club. But overall, I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for this whole crew to gel. But I still have questions, Rach. I still have questions. Can you be more than just Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen in a push to the playoffs? And last night was a great example, right? Nichushkin drives the net, Lehkonen cleans it up, right? The second goal, O'Connor on the shorthanded goal. Yep. The Avs are just going to start to put pieces together over these first 30 games or so, and I'll have a better answer on how I feel about this team at that stage. But so far, so good. So we're going to stay in the moment.
So for sure. And if you go back and you look at the Stanley Cup run, it was so many of those players that weren't the stars that we talk about who produced for the Avs. So you're right. For them to be able to truly make a run, we have to see some of the other ones. I kind of joke, I'm not going to lie. I always like the third and fourth line. I'm like, you guys just need to go out there and be good enough that everybody else can get some rest. But if you truly want to go for another cup, they have to be able to do some sort of production. Mikko Rantanen, are you freaking kidding me? The Moose, incredible start to the season.
Yeah, and he has slowly become one of the most underrated players in the NHL. I really believe that. And you may sit there and go, what do you mean underrated? Everybody thinks really highly of Mikko. They may need to start thinking higher of him. Like we're talking about maybe like top 7, top 5 player in the NHL type of guy, Rachel. That's who we're talking about. In fact, I had a conversation with a good buddy of mine that covers another NHL team the other day, and I said, pick a wing that you would take over Mikko Rantanen right now, across the league. There's nobody that like jumps out to me as like, no, you want that dude over Mikko. It's like, I don't know. He's right up there with some of the best in the world.
I am constantly amazed by Mikko, and I have called him underrated so many times I can't even count because, everyone gives the attention to Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, but no one really, like when you name off, or Gabriel Landeskog if he was healthy, but no one names off Mikko unless you're here in Denver and you're seeing it. But even last night when Mikko got the goal, I was like, oh, Mikko, because you expect like that to come from Nathan MacKinnon or Cale Makar. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but it's so great that he seems to be so consistent and he has really found his rhythm.
And you just said it, consistency, right? I mean, Mikko Rantanen had 55 goals, I think it was last year. I mean, that was a Avalanche franchise record, right? So for goals in a single season. This guy is just continuing to blossom before our eyes. And I'm in the position where, and I think this is why I'm holding them to a higher standard. You've got Nate, you've got Mikko, you've got Cale. This is it. Like, whatever you can do to support these guys with as much talent as possible, the right fits, let's go. Like, it doesn't get better than this from a GM, a president perspective. You've got gold here, right? I mean, this is it. You've got the foundation of a championship team, especially considering just what seems to be the steal of the century with Alexander Georgiev, coming over from New York in the offseason for, I think it was like a 3rd round pick they got for Georgiev. I mean, it wasn't much, Rach. And when you have what is the foundation of a complete team, you've got to do whatever you can to support them. And that's why the Moneyball thing for me, it's like, oh, come on, you drive me crazy here. Like, let's stop futzing around. You know what I mean? It's time to go. You're in the middle of the window, which is why last year at the deadline, I was really disappointed with what they did. But I don't believe they thought at the deadline last year they had enough to win. But if you look at this team, this is the foundation of a team that if they can stay healthy, Rach, and that is, that is going to be a huge question mark. I know, all year long. Can you stay healthy? Because if they can, and this current iteration of the Avalanche is playing better towards the trade deadline, that's when we can start talking about, all right, well, do you move on from a Sam Girard to load up even further if that's what it turns out to be, right? So we'll figure it out 3 games in, but I have reverted to my standard that I held this team to back in 21-22 when they won the cup. Because last year, Rach, I mean, free pass, right? I mean, last year, a lot of it was a free pass. We were still drunk off the parade halfway through the season here. Do you have concerns? No. And I talked about this with Mike Evans on the show yesterday when I filled in for Schlereth. Mike was the king of the free pass last year. It would be like game 4 against Seattle. Mike, you concerned? Not at all. It was like, all right, put the bubbly down. It's gone flat, right? Like, this is a new season. So I'm going to revert back and hold them to that high standard that I held them to when they won the cup. So that's where I'm at.
I'm 100% with you. I am nervous, though, when Georgiev needs a night off. We don't know what's going on with Francouz, and that's scary. Like, is this going to be another month thing, or is it going to be 6 more months? Like, we just don't know. But eventually, Georgie will need a night off.
Yeah, he will. And like you said, Pavel Francouz is out indefinitely right now, and you just feel bad for him, right? He's on long-term injured reserve. He had the one great season, Rach. He gave him a great season when they won the cup. I mean, he was 5-0, 6-0 in the playoffs. He was fantastic. But right now, it looks like their backup goaltender would be Justus Annunen, who is their goalie they have at their up in Loveland there with the Eagles.
Yep.
He's been okay. Rach, he hasn't been great, and they went out and they added I can't even Kravs. I'll learn his name the second he gets between the pipes for the ass. Okay, that's a deal we can make right now.
We're talking the 4 string down there, all right?
That's
Even though we know
Annunen's
right now number 2, but we're still talking 4 string right there. It's definitely a little concerning, but when you also have a defenseman like Cale Makar, obviously making history last night. Oh, let me make sure I do the right one. He's now the fastest defenseman in the NHL to hit 250 points. That is absolutely outrageous. Cale Makar, a freaking stud, did it, I think, in 6 less games than Bobby Orr. Like, it's just crazy what Cale Makar is doing. How lucky are we that we get to see him?
That's really kind of where I'm at. Like, I just am full of appreciation every time we get to watch him play. Like, it's just rare. You can tell there's not a lot of players across all sports, Rach, and we watch so much, right? But there's not a lot of players that you can watch and go, oh, that's one of the all-time greats. Like, I am currently witnessing one of the all-time greats. That's the pleasure of watching Nikola Jokic. It's kind of like the same thing with Cale. This is a generational talent who changed how to play the position, and just very grateful and appreciative because the kid is a dynamo. He really is. And last night, Seattle fans, get over it, man. Like, really, get over it. Booing him every time he touched the puck. Like, how obnoxious is that? I mean, this is one of the game's greats. This kid, I mean, the funniest part about that to me is Cale is not a mean guy or a bad guy.
One of the nicest people ever.
Right. It's like you're booing this kid who's like a Boy Scout. All right. Like, if that's where you want to be, Seattle, it's okay. It's Seattle. They've given us enough crap, Rachel.
Did a rivalry like have the beginning stages of between the Kraken and the Avalanche moving forward?
I don't know. Kind of feels like maybe something's organically bubbling up, right? I mean, because when you try and force rivalries, that sucks. Like being around CU, the Colorado football program, it's like, oh, Utah's your new rival in Pac-12. Everybody's like, no, Utah kicks our ass every time we play Utah. They're not our rival. Each team has to win, and so I think Seattle and Colorado with the new expansion team. Look, we kind of have a semi-rivalry with Vegas already, right? Based upon what happened in the playoffs. At least maybe we think of it that way. I don't know if Vegas thinks of it that way, but
let's hope Vegas isn't doing like a Chiefs Broncos thing where they're like, no, not at all.
Right, exactly. Like we won a cup, Vegas won a cup. So like there's a little bit of that boiling. But yeah, I think there is something organically starting with Seattle. I do.
How could we forget? And I honestly, this must have just been me. There were so many moments last year where I was like, what the heck is even happening in the series against the Kraken? But Cogliano obviously goes out. We have the clip of it here. He's got a fractured neck. Were you surprised that it only took a minute and a half or whatever it was for Logan O'Connor to say, no, here we go. It's time to drop the gloves. Let's fight.
Yeah, that was a great tone setter for the game last night. You knew instantly, and that's the thing. Sorry, I'm in the van here. That's the thing. Cogliano is a team leader in that locker room.
Yeah.
Right. And guys really care about him. And that was something that they were going to have to make Seattle answer for. And they did right away. And credit to Logan O'Connor, because that's a guy without Gabriel Landeskog in the lineup. That's typically Landy's, fight to pick. But LOC has stepped up the last few years without Landeskog and has kind of been that guy for them. Ross Colton, actually, their third line center, had a funny line after the game last night, because I think he's had 4 fights in his career. He obviously came over from Tampa. The Avs played Tampa in the Cup. And he and O'Connor fought 2 times previously. So Colton after the game was like, well, it was great to see that, because normally I'm on the other side of an O'Connor ass kicking, right? And so it was good to see another team finally get to taste that for once. But yeah, Eberle, he's another one of those guys that's regarded around the league as a good guy. But in a series that gets so emotional and so tight in the playoffs, sometimes guys do out of character things. And maybe that was why Makar stapled him to the boards, and then he broke Cogliano's neck. So yeah, it was good to see. It was good to see. But don't you love that about hockey? Like,
I do.
That's players, policing themselves, right? That's a little frontier justice. It's like, all right, we can move on with the game, but we got some business to settle first. And we keep receipts, just like Coach Prime.
Right. I just wonder if like Logan O'Connor's going out to him in his ear being like, just so you know, as soon as this is done, like, get ready. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, is it like we're talking smack right before the game and you're like, all right, get ready to brawl because it's about to happen?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just Logan O'Connor comes onto the ice. You give him a little tap on the shins and says, we're going. And
Let's get ready.
And he understands and they go, so.
All right, moving on to Broncos real quick. I want to get your opinion on the pros and cons of benching Russell Wilson. I can't believe we're at this point in the season already, Matt. Yeah. A lot of people are saying Russ has a big paycheck coming for him. And if he somehow gets hurt, he walks away with even more money, $37 million. Is it just better for the Broncos to say, you know what, Russ? We got to make sure that you're healthy for who knows what your future is going to hold, but it definitely may not be here. Or are you on the same side of Russell Wilson still could be the future of this team? It's a tough question.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think about how I wanted to respond to it. Future. There is no future with Russ. I mean, even though he's been better than last year, Rachel, he's not good enough to make others better around him. He's not the tide that raises all boats. He may not be as much of the problem as he was last year, but he's not enough of the solution. And you sit in a situation right now for the Broncos where you're 1-5, playoffs are gone, winning season's gone. Every, carrot that you had dangling out in front of you before the season, it's over, right? It's about to be week 7. There's 11 more of these things to go. So yeah, it is time. The bye week comes up in 2 weeks and it coincides with the trade deadline around Halloween. Here's how you play it. You give them the Derek Carr where you tell them, just go home. We're benching you, go home. We don't want you around anymore. It's over in Denver. Thanks for trying. Try again somewhere else. If someone else wants to go there, but outside of that, you're done. And it's Jarrett Stidham the rest of the year.
Wow. Okay. The fact that you're literally like, go home. See you later, Russell Wilson.
It's over.
Okay, real quick though.
Sierra's pregnant. take paternity leave for all I care, but you're not going to be the quarterback of the Denver Broncos anymore, because if Russell Wilson gets hurt, his $37 million, if he cannot pass a physical at the beginning of this next league year, becomes guaranteed for 2025, not for 2024, for 2025. So then you're into him for 2 years, Rach. We can't do this around Broncos country for 2 more years. You can't flip a culture. I mean, don't you remember when Sean Payton came in? We were talking about, look, this is a guy who's won a Super Bowl. He can finally fix the culture. Rach, it's toxic. It's more toxic than ever. So no, we got to move on. It's time to go.
I hate that discussion. The whole Sean Payton, he's won a Super Bowl. I'm like, okay, great. That was also 14 years ago. A lot's changed in 14 years. I was 13 14 years ago. Besides the point. Moving on real quick, back to this Russell Wilson thing. Yeah. But what if you can possibly have, I don't know if Bill Belichick is going to be with the Patriots, but like, what if the Patriots are looking at Russell Wilson like, maybe it's just what's going on down there. So maybe you try and show off Russell Wilson a little bit so that another team is like, maybe, just maybe we can find that spark again.
Russ can post videos from his Encinitas home running routes outside with receivers if he wants to show off what he still has, because it's not going to be.
But don't the Broncos want him to show off? That way somebody would be like, all right, we'll take on that nasty looking contract. Or do you think Russell Wilson's time in the NFL is just going to be done?
Unless you drug the other NFL GMs and owners and head coaches, I don't think anybody's going to want to take Russell Wilson on, honestly. Think about it right now. What teams would Russell Wilson start for across the NFL? Just think.
Oh, boy. I don't know.
Maybe Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill? Maybe
the Falcons.
Who?
I said the Falcons, Atlanta.
Maybe Desmond Ritter. That's a good one. So maybe 2. We come up with 2.
And again, maybe
because they're waiting for Rodgers.
No.
They're waiting for Rodgers.
The Patriots, maybe? But is somebody with a younger quarterback looking and being like, it's just not the right fit for Sean Payton and Russell Wilson? Like, I'm just trying to think of any way that the Broncos can get out of this contract.
Oh, they can. They can tell him to go home, and then they can cut him post June 5th next year and just be done with it. That's because you know what they did with Sean Payton? They threw good money after bad, Rach. They paid him all of that money to come in and fix Russell Wilson. Think about this. If Russ hadn't been here, you think Sean Payton was the hire? Maybe. I don't think we could really say yes or no, but I think the truth is that because he was here, he had to be the hire. You couldn't go get another first-time head coach. You couldn't go get another, young up-and-coming guy. But now that you have Sean Payton and you have the potential of getting a first or second overall pick and what people are claiming to be 2 can't-miss quarterback prospects, and Caleb Williams, who I think is a stud, and with Drake May, it's time. It's time to take the pressure off the situation for the Walton Penner family ownership group, Rachel. It is time to move on. It is time.
Okay, so that means, and this is a question to everybody in the comments too, Matt, what are you rooting for this upcoming season, or like the rest of this season? Are you rooting for absolute tank, see where you can land? Are you rooting for the Chicago Bears to start winning some games so hopefully the Broncos can get number 1? Or are you like a lot of the players in that locker room where you're rooting just to win another game?
Oh, tank. Yeah, tank. Yeah.
So you're rooting for the Bears?
I mean, I've rooted for the Bears my whole life. You have to understand. So that's really not
so you've experienced this heartbreak for many years.
I'm used to this, Rachel. I'm used to bad football. So yeah, exactly.
Yikes.
I don't think Justin Fields is the answer either, and I don't think the Bears do either. But the Bears are in a great situation because you have to remember they own Carolina's first round draft pick this year. So if Carolina finishes with the second worst record, the Bears have the first and second overall pick, and that could be Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. Or they trade the second overall pick with a team at 3 or 4 to move up, and they still take Marvin Harrison Jr. because someone else wants Drake May. Who knows what happens? But Rach, it's about to be week 7. Like, we haven't even passed week 7. We're talking about the NFL draft. That's where we're at. Let's tank it out. It's how else do you fix this? Because you don't. I mean, you don't. And if you move on from Russ, how else do you get a quarterback? You're not getting them through free agency. I mean, there's nobody out there. Who do you want? Marcus Mariota?
I know.
Teddy Bridgewater? Like, do we want to go down that road again? No. The only get out of jail free card on Russell Wilson is if you get Caleb Williams or Drake May. It's the only way. It's the only way.
Oh, you guys, it is so tough. I did just put up the poll on our YouTube channel. It's either tank, cheer for the Bears, or just win some football games. 67% of people are saying just tank for it. It's a bummer, you guys. It's I can't believe we're having these conversations. Just thinking about where we started at the beginning of both of these seasons, Matt, is absolutely unreal. But as always, it's an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Where are you up to? Are you in Boulder this weekend?
I am. I will be in Boulder a little bit later. I'm just bouncing back and forth between a lot of my properties today. I am on maintenance duty today. We have a lot of things to clean up.
Very, very nice. Well, Matt, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for just a little bit.
Thanks, Rach.
All right. Matt Smith right there, everybody. Tons of hockey knowledge. Always so much fun to have him on the show, too. You guys, we're going to move into just a few other little tidbits real quick for you. Let's get on to an espresso shot of information. We've got to talk about the fact that, one, Coach Prime is writing a book. Okay. Coach Prime, I see. It's supposed to come out, I believe, in March. And I'm like, all right, Coach Prime. We're doing a lot, my friend. And I'm on the Coach Prime hype train. Don't get me wrong. But we've got a book. We've got a new documentary series coming out. We've got plenty of merch. If anything, Prime definitely knows how to market himself very, very well. But I'm like, Prime, the hype has fallen off the bandwagon when it comes to CU. Don't get me wrong. People are still paying attention because it's you, Deion Sanders. It is you, Coach Prime. But not because of necessarily the football program anymore. 3 weeks ago, I would have said yes. But now we need to see more production out of that team. People have figured out this CU Buffs team. So while I love the idea of a book, I wish this was like an off-season adventure that we were doing. When you start to write a book, it takes a really, really long time. So I'm like, I wish this was more something that we weren't doing in season. Maybe that's just me being a little I don't love this for you, but you also never know. Lots of people have different opinions. Going back to some of the comments. I always love to do this. Patriots will not beat us. I really hope not, because I'll be there on Christmas Eve. And if I walk away with the Broncos getting a loss on Christmas Eve, I will not be thrilled. Really quick, want to go back to the poll, though. Another news, if you haven't seen, and I'm curious, you put this in the comments. You guys are always so good about this stuff. Do you like Roger Goodell as the commissioner of the NFL? And I know that can be a little bit of a interesting, touchy-feely kind of subject, but he just got his contract extended to go until 2027. That was some news that was coming out of the NFL today. So I'm curious if you guys are on the Walter Penner group, my gosh, of the Goodell. But let me know if you guys like him. Oh, people said no in all capital letters. Yes, nobody cares about him. Well, he's here for another couple of years. Last thing I want to get into, you guys, real quick, and this is about the fact that Pro Football Focus has broken down who is kind of responsible for some of the sacks that have been happening, and they took a deep dive into Russell Wilson. And things seem to be getting worse for Russ, which is hard to believe. You look back at last year, and we were all like, oh my gosh. He had been sacked 20 times through 6 games in 2022. 20 times in 6 games. So far, he's been sacked 19 times this year. Okay. So 1 less. But last year, so many of them were on the offensive line and not necessarily on Russell Wilson. This year, they've got the numbers. Are you ready for this? 7 of the times he's been sacked have been on blocking issues. So on the offensive line. 12 of them have been on Russ holding on to the ball too long. I have been very critical of the offensive line. Very, very critical of the offensive line. But to see the fact that of the times that Russell Wilson had been sacked this year, 7 of them have been on the blocking issues and 12 have been onto Russell Wilson holding the ball. It goes back to what Matt and I were just talking about of what other team is going to be looking at Russell Wilson and saying, maybe we could just take on that contract and get him back to the old Russ. I don't know, but it's definitely not good. And I don't know who else would really be looking at the top of mind comes for me is Atlanta or New England, but who knows what the future is going to hold for New England out there. I really think this might be Bill Belichick's last year, which is crazy if you think about a coach who probably put so much fear into so many coaches and so many players for years and years and years when they had Tom Brady. And it's he could go out on possibly his worst season ever, and you just don't even know what's going to happen. So I'm curious what will happen with Bill Belichick at the end of this season, but also Russell Wilson has to be better. He has to get the ball out So many people have talked about him being like, is he too worried about his stats? It's a fair question when you see stuff like that, where it's like he was holding on to the ball too long. Is it because nobody was open, or is it because he's looking for the deep ball? What is it all about? It's a fair question. Everybody, I am off. Yes, I am headed to Florida. Wish me luck and tell me to enjoy like the warm weather. Will Peterson, Jake Shapiro, and plenty of other guests are going to be with you guys until I get back on Tuesday. I'm so excited. I will be watching and tuning into a little bit of the Avs game, Broncos game on Sunday as well. I will definitely follow me on Twitter. I'll be keeping up there. Love you guys all so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I know it's only Wednesday, but it's my Friday. So have a great Wednesday, and we will see you guys later. Bye, everybody.